Woo, what's going on, YouTube? It's Donnie B all day. So, I have a request video to get done here regarding the Cold Steel Wild West Bowie. And my Wild West Bowie is all oiled, so I'm going to try and do most of this with the knife still in the scabbard so I have something to grab onto. So, like many, mine has a vibrating S-guard. And the reason is vibration or striking them just causes them to loosen. It is what it is. It happens with almost any S-guard knife of this style. You're going to get eventually, especially if it's brass and wood, you're going to get loosening. And the reason is you have two soft materials and a hard material. So what's happening is this hard material staying put, and these two soft materials are getting bent and warped and changed every time you touch them. It's very, very easy to bend and warp brass, just as it is to bend and warp wood. As soon as you get this going, now all this bending, every time I do this, it's pushing on the wood, and eventually you're going to round the wood out. And it's just the way it is. So can you combat this to where you can get it straight? Generally, yes. Generally, you can either do shims, so you can take off the handle, and you can put a thin aluminum shim in there if you have one, then put back on your handles, and the shim will hold that in real tight. And then eventually, when the wood and brass starts to wear, you'll start to get some wobble again. If you've ever looked at a katana, like a samurai sword, you'll notice at the hand guard there's usually a little metal shim, right? And that's exactly what those do, is it keeps that from happening. Is it worth it to get that to stop? Is it a necessity? Is it necessary? Generally, when your hand is against it, there's not going to be wobbling because your hand is on it. That wobble isn't going to affect any part of the knife. It just makes an ugly sound. That's it. That's the only thing that does, is creates an ugly sound. If you don't want the ugly sound, by all means, do what we're going to do today. So, we're going to start with these screws here. Luckily, Cold Steel does not pin these. They use a Chicago screw, right? And what a Chicago screw is, it's just a screw that screws into a screw, kind of, right? So we'll figure that out. So all you do is get yourself a screwdriver and start to undo it, right? Now remember that there is a lanyard hole, and it is a brass pin lanyard hole. I have not taken this apart yet, so I have no idea what's going on with that. I just dropped my screw. There we go. I found it. Thingy, I have a rug on the bottom, right below me, and on the edge of the rug is fringe, and this kind of stuff hides in the fringe. So let me show you what we're working with here. You see that, right? That doesn't screw into a nut. That screws into another one of these, but hollow. So we'll put that down there, and we will get the other one going. And all you need is a screwdriver, and be very, very careful not to use the wrong size screwdriver. I know some people don't know that screwdrivers come in different sizes, but if you use the wrong size screwdriver, these screws are brass, and if you warp your brass, then you're screwed. You're unscrewed. So you want to make sure you have a really thin screw, so you can slide it easily into that gap and turn it. I already have it started, but I don't want to damage this screw, so I'm just going to keep it going with another little screw here, something really, really sharp, and get in there, because this screw depth on the inside of the screw is short, right? It's not a great screw depth. So you really need the right size. Otherwise, it's going to be very easy to strip your screw, and then you're all assed out. So And I'll show you what I mean by all that. So you look at this screw head, there isn't a big line. You could always, once you get it off, cut yourself a new line. But see that? There's not a lot of depth in there. So when you're talking about putting a screw into the screw head, it doesn't really go in that far. So you really want to make sure that you're using a very sharp screw. All right, narrow screw. All right, so that is one side. Now, just by pulling on it and trying to wiggle it, I want to see if it's going to come undone. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to turn it because I have the guard here and that there, so I can't spin it. If these were rounded, it would spin, but that would be a useless thing. So what I'm going to do now, until I get to that point, is I'm going to take out the other side. All right, so just going to unscrew that. And we'll see if it actually, if it's threaded into the wood, which it doesn't look like it. So that means if it's just spinning, that means you need to put pressure on the inside. Let's see if this one's small enough. It should be. So I'm going to put pressure on that side, from the other side, and I'll show you what I'm doing. I'm just pushing in there, and look at that, it pops right through. So a couple twists with the screwdriver, and you got out your hollow side. So, and all I'm doing is taking this screw bit and I'm putting it inside the hole until it's making contact with the other screw. And if it pushes out, it pushes out. If you have to screw it, you have to unscrew it. You might have to give it a couple turns. That side actually came out very, very easy. So Chicago screws are out. Now I'm left with 2 handle scales and a brass rivet. So there's 2 ways I can go about this. I can try and get a punch and punch out my brass pin here, my hollow pin, or I can try and wedge in between the scales and the frame of the blade here. So what I'm going to do is take a very thin screwdriver and see if I can just get it in between there without damaging my my scale, my wooden scale. And if I can, then what I will do is just start working it up, working it up, working it up. And right away I got some shift. So that's a good thing until I drop it, ruin everything. All right, so here we go. I've got, you can see, I'll show you guys. You can see that there's some shift. So maybe give it a couple little wiggles and see if I can begin to loosen it. And it looks like it's going to loosen. And the worst possible thing that could happen here is by putting all this pressure is I can break the scale. It's a pretty easy remake. It's a pretty easy shape to recreate. So that would be no problem. I don't want to break it though because I actually like it. So now what I'm doing is I have the screwdriver in between. So now I'm just going to work my screwdriver up and try and open up this gap a little bit. And if I have to, what I'll do is I'll just stick a knife. Let me see. I got the Frost cutlery sling blade on me. So what I can do with my sling blade is do the same thing. Just open up that gap a little bit and begin to push this in. And now I can try and just work back the knife. And you can see how it's open here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick the screwdriver in there. Stick the screwdriver in there. Ooh, trying to show you guys, and it's kind of hard doing both. All right, so I'll put the screwdriver in this side so I have something to hold on to. So screwdriver is in on this side, right? And this makes things difficult when you have to do it as a display. In on this side, I take the knife out, and now I switch the knife from that side of the screwdriver to that side of the screwdriver, so you can see the gap. You can see the gap is opening, right? Now I'm going to wiggle it just a little bit, So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a second screw head and I'm going to put it on the other side. you can see where this is going. And woo, now I'm going to take my knife blade out and I'm going to get even closer to the pin. And from here I can take out that screw head because it's really close, actually. And there we go. So now I'm going to wiggle this one. I'm going to wiggle that knife right in there. I just dropped the other screw head. And that's not it. And I'll find that in a second because I don't need it. So now I'm going to just try and push my knife blade in between this scale and turn it gently. And if you don't have a good knife, turning your knife inside like this is a bad idea. The Frost Cutlery Sling Blade, it's a very good knife. All right, so let's see if I can't get that to wedge. If even, you know, even if I can get this side above the guard, then I'd be able to spin it, and just like that. So I was able to use my knife to pry this away from there, and that means now all I have to do is wiggle, 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 and ta-da. So it's actually a whole lot easier than I think some people would guess. And it looks like they did solder it. You can see it right here. It was soldered. But hammering on it just breaks the solder. And they soldered it with brass. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, you can see that loosening right there. What I want to do is try to break it free now. And that means I'm going to take the sheath off. I'm going to try and break that free and then restart. All right, so this is probably dumb. Guys, don't grab a blade. Don't be me. Use something. Use like a towel. Something like that. Even a paper towel. Uh-oh. And that way you have something to grab onto instead of the very, very sharp, dangerous knife edge that Cold Steel provides, because it is a very, very sharp edge. Okay, so let's try and see if we can't get, let's see where I'm hung up, that solder right there. I'm wondering if I should just leave the solder and climb that. So I can see what happened is right here they notch the wood, right? You can see the wood is notched, and the reason for that is to go around the solder, because that's where they solder it. So because that's notched, what's happening is it's not fitting 100% because the solder mark isn't going to be perfect, right? So that's where all your wiggle is coming from right there. The solder breaks and all of a sudden you have a little gap. This gap is not going to get any better once I put this on. The only way to make it better would be to get an aluminum shim and drill the center and cut out the center, and then make sure it's the exact width as the guard, and then make a little oval or square and mate it up with the end of this. Either that or I can JB Weld it, and I'm going with the latter. So I'm going to leave that on there. I'm not going to take off the guard, and I really wanted to because I wanted to get the JB Weld in there, but I can always JB Weld right here and then just do this and let it get inside that crack naturally. Then once it is, I will just hold it down, and I'll put on my scales and redo that. So you can see that Cold Steel did a really good job. This is weight. That's all it is weight reduction. So you have a better fighting knife because all the freaking weight is right here. And that's freaking arm lopping weight. You know, it carries the head around. And that's really good. I love this knife, man. I love this knife. So that's it. I really would like to take this off, but I didn't bring anything up with me to get off the solder because I didn't realize that was going to be there and be an issue. The only thing I could do is take my trusty screwdriver and try to break away all that solder that's on there. And by the look of it, that's going to take a little while. Or I could just sand it. That would be no problem at all. But I'm not going to do any of that because I'm already bored with it. So all I'm going to do is JB Weld the snot out of right here, move it in, put back on the scales, and I'm going to JB Weld the scales as well. So those don't shift at all. Will I be able to get them off? No. The next time I would have to get these off, well, the only reason I'd have to get these scales off is if A, I broke them, or B, I want to change them. And either way, the scales would no longer matter at that point. So all I'd have to do is take off the screws, take out the rivet, and then I can just chop it off. So it really wouldn't matter. But I don't see these breaking, and I don't see me not liking them anymore because I just like them. So that's what we're going to do, is we're going to JB Weld right here. So let me get a piece of cardboard and mix some epoxy. Well, that was easy. And I just noticed this hat and this sweatshirt both came to me from Cowboy Sebop. Cowboy Sebop, I'm like from the waist up, all you today, buddy. Man, I didn't even think about that. So I have a piece of cardboard, and I have JB Weld. And this stuff you can get right at Home Depot, Lowe's, or anywhere else. Just the 5-minute weld. And what you do is you just pour this and this, an equal amount of both, and you take any kind of thing. Obviously, you can see I use this one a lot for it. And so I'll use this pen and just mix it together in a little circle. And once it's mixed together, you apply it onto whatever you plan on putting it on. So that's what we are going to do. Let me move the knife. Oh, shit. You guys have no idea how close I just came to cutting my dog's foot off. The dog is laying right there on the other side of the table, and I went to put this down, and it slipped off. And it got to this point when I caught it and pinned it against the table, and the dog's foot was right there. He has no idea. He just almost lost a paw. All right, so let's put that in a manner to where it's not going to kill any animals. All right, so let's actually close this. I'm not going to need it. All right, and I'm going to start my epoxying. All right, so this might take a second because I use it, so it's at the end. I have more somewhere, but gotta use what you have, the other old stuff, before you get the new stuff out. And don't be afraid to put more than you're going to need on there, because if you put less than you need on there, well, then you're kind of screwed. So right there, that's about it. So now I need to get the red cap, and make sure that you're not just putting the black or just putting the red, because without both, you have, it doesn't come together. It takes both to make it work. So here I'm just going to squirt on the red in an equal amount and break it off. Now all you do is literally just mix it, and you're going to notice it's going to turn foggy. And when the whole thing is foggy and you see no more clear, then you're doing pretty good. Look at it getting nice and milky. That's what you want your JB Weld to look like. All right, and once you have that, that means you've got, in 5 minutes, it's going to be set enough to where things aren't going to move if you don't purposely move them. But, I like to let them cure for 24 hours. 24 hours, even though it's a 5-minute weld, 24 hours is a good bet to where you're not going to have things screwing up. All right, so here's my blade. I want to get, actually, I'm going to start with it as high up as I can get it. So there's a gap between there and there. And I am going to start generously coating this whole area right here. And by putting that on there, then what I'm going to do is start wiggling my guard, letting some of that sink down. So now I'm going to set my guard all the way down as low as I can possibly get it. All right. And I'm going to add some more into that gap. And don't worry about getting JB Weld on your handguard, because it's going to be A, against your hand, so nobody's ever going to see it. And B, who cares? All it is just a little bit of secure stuff, a little little bit of good, so it's nothing bad. And then afterwards, if you want, you could take a razor blade and try to get it down, or sandpaper, or however you want to get it, but you really don't need to. Are you going to be able to see it? Yeah, you'll be able to see, like, you know, clear glue. That's what it's going to come out. It's going to come out clear. So let me wiggle it. And by wiggling it, what I'm doing is I'm forcing it in. Now, I don't want to coat the blade in it. That's why I'm going from this side. Otherwise, I could just flip it over and put it on the other side too, which would make it easier to fill this gap. But it comes down to, do I want to get some on the blade? And you know what? Maybe I'll just dangle some in there. So I'm going to open up this gap right here as much as I can. And then I'm going to just put a strand in there, real easy like, so it doesn't get all over the blade. I don't care if I get a little on the blade. That doesn't matter to me. All right, it might matter to you to get a little JB Weld on your blade. So if it does, just don't do this part. And a little strand on this side right there. It's all about, you know, do you want it secure or do you want it pretty? So now I'm going to close that gap and open up the other gap and do the same thing. I'm going to let a string just fall down inside that gap and fill it up. I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to do the same thing over there. Just get a little string and voila. So now I have that, and you could take a piece of paper or whatever if you want, and you can kind of like edge it in, you know what I mean? So while it's still wet, you could just edge it and push it into there. And what that's going to do, it's going to help you get off some of the excess off the blade before it actually hardens. And then you'll feel better about yourself. So right now I'm going to close that gap as good as I can. And you will see that I now have JB Weld all around that. So now I know that when that dries, that is going to be hard as a freaking rock. And don't touch it. It's going to leave black on your hands. If you don't have good hand cleaner, it's not a good idea to do this without rubber gloves. I am a master at getting my hands dirty, so it's okay. You thought I was going to say I'm a master at not getting my hands dirty. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the parts where the screw doesn't touch. That's what I want to do, because if I don't have to get my screws all junky, then I don't want to, right? So I'm going to go all the way around that, and you'll notice right here, it's actually stamped cold steel. So people were always whining about, well, how do you know it's really cold steel? If they don't mark the blade, they only mark the scabbard. Well, take off your scales and you'll see it says cold steel. That's how you know you have a real one. If it doesn't say cold steel right there, well, then you got duped. You bought a fake. All right, so JB Weld in here. And this is really going to keep those scales on. And that means even if my screws came loose somehow or for some reason, it's okay, because that JB Weld is going to be holding my scales on nice and tight. And so I will have no worries. If all of a sudden a screw got loose and it got lost, who cares? Who cares? So now I'm going to take all the remaining stuff and I'm just going to pack it down all along the edge right here. That's it. I'm going to pile it on right there. And that way, once I put on the wood scales, it's going to smooth all that out, but it's going to fill in that last gap, right? So I'm going to line up one scale there, wipe my hands. I don't want to get too much on the scales because I don't want to stain my scales. And then when it bubbles over right here, I'm just going to smooth it out right there and coat that. All right. So now I'm going to take the other side of my scale, and I'm going to push that pin in, that brass pin, and get it nice and tight with the other side just by wiggling it in. And with the goop on there, I know it's glue and it means it's going to cause resistance, but at first the glue is wet and slippery, so it's actually going to not cause resistance. It's going to help me push it in. So it's basically like lubrication. So now I notice that my screw holes are full of goop. So my screws are definitely going to be gooped in there. Am I worried about that? Not at all. So right now I have good hand cleaner. So I'm going to use my finger to push in all this excess glue inside these cracks here. Why? Because it's okay. And then I'm going to run my fingers along the spine. And what I'm going to do is just seal that edge with this glue, right? With this adhesive. And one of the things that's going to do, besides get me all dirty and sticky, one of the things that's going to do is it's going to put a layer that's going to dry and harden. It'll be hard like a rock, but it's going to put it on the edge there. So it's going to help reduce any chance of me getting corrosion on my steel. Aha. So now I'm going to take my first Chicago pin and I'm going to shove it into one of these holes there. And if it goes all the way through, then you're lined up. If it doesn't go all the way through, wiggle until it lines up. All right. So that's that, and that is that. If you really want to secure the snot out of these screws, you can actually touch the threads to the goop, and by doing that, then they will lock forever. So I have some already in one of these holes. It's actually bubbled up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it out of there with the screw and put it into the other one because that one has none. So my screws will never ever come out again, ever, unless I need them out. Then I'm going to be tearing it up. So what I'm going to do is start turning that by hand. Start turning the other one by hand, and I guarantee you it doesn't matter how much vibration these things go through, getting a little bit of JB Weld on those threads. You think blue Loctite works good? Whew. Wait until you get a load of this. All right, so all I'm doing is pushing them in by hand. I'm trying not to disturb the stuff that I have around there. And all I'm doing is turning it in. I'm stabbing myself in the stomach. Let's do this. Let's put it right here. Maybe that'll make it easier. There we go. So, doing that. Now I'm going to take my screwdriver and I'm going to turn it so you guys can see it. Push this side of the Chicago screw while I twist this side. And forgot that it's not set on tighten. Okay, there we go. And now I'm going to turn it. Turn it, turn it, turn it. It's sucking in the other side all by itself. And voila on that one. And let's get this thing turning here. Got to turn them before they harden, that's for sure. All right, so now I start to turn this bugger right here. If I can actually see it. Of course, I got the light on the other side of it. There we go. This one is a really thin, has a thin screw head on it. Let's see here. There we go. A minute. In it to win it. That is a really thin screw. Okay. So it's in there. I'm actually going to turn the other side. It's like turning the other cheek, only different. And this one is easier to get to, so I'm going to do that. All right, so my pins are in there. My glue is just everywhere. I got glue all over this thing, and that's okay for me. I'm telling you, use gloves. Keep yourself nice and dry from it. And there you go. So now what's going to happen is I'm going to let this dry, and I'm going to let it sit for 24 hours. First, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my fingers to get all the excess smooth, right? Don't be afraid to not use your fingers. This is the way I do it because, like I said, I have stuff that'll get this off my fingers. It's really, really hard to get off your fingers, right? And if you love brass like I don't, it's going to dirty up your brass. So I don't care about the brass. I just care about the knife working. And that's why I really didn't care about if it had a little jiggle in it, because it still works no matter what. Let me put that over here on the wood. All right, so right now there's no jiggle. It's already starting to harden. But what I need to do is I need to put this in a place now where I can just let it sit, and it's not going to, the handle's not going to touch anything, right? So that's it. I'm going to bring it downstairs. I'm going to put it in something and let it just sit and get some rest. So hold on. Well, I didn't really have to go anywhere. I had a candle right behind me, so I just stuck it on top of the candle blade side, and it's holding it up there. So now what's going to happen is it's going to dry, and then by tomorrow, well, actually in a couple minutes, it's going to be hard. It's not going to be moving anywhere, actually, in probably another 30 seconds. But I want it to stay completely solid forever. So what I'm going to do is let that cure for 24 hours before I play with it. Tomorrow I'll be able to mess around with it and see how well the JB Weld held up, and I pretty much already know. And then if I really didn't want all that stuff on the handle, what I can do is I can sand down the handle while it's on the blade, and then just re-stain it while it's on the blade, and everything will be a-okay. Personally, I don't care, because it's gonna dry and harden like rock, so there's not gonna be any difference with it on there than with it off. As long as you smooth it out, that's all that matters. As far as the rest, got stuck to some stuff here. As far as the rest of this, that's it. Just get rid of it. Keep your whatever you use as a stirring tool. I use a pen. Keep it somewhere where it can continue to be used, because you might need to mix them again, and it's always nice to have one tool, used instead of multiple tools, and that way you don't waste things. This, put it in the trash to where it doesn't matter what it touches. So you don't want to just throw this in the trash to where it's going to rub against the side of the trash can or your whatever, because it'll stick, and then you're not getting it off once it hardens. All right, so that's it for now. And then what we'll do is tomorrow I will take it out while it's hard, which is going to be for you the next second, because I'll press pause and it'll already be tomorrow, and we will see how well that goes. Hold on. All right, everything is working well. Side note, it's not tomorrow yet. Wanted to show you what I use for a hand cleaner, the Fast Orange, and you can get it at like auto parts stores and like Home Depots and Lowe's and stuff like that. It's perfect. I mean, it's perfect stuff. I gotta find that screwdriver head I just remembered. But stuff like that will get your hands clean no matter what. It will work really fast, really fast. And if you've ever used JB Weld and got it on your hands, you know how much of a pain in the balls it is to get off your hands. Your hands get all black and sticky and hard, and it's like peeling skin off yourself. So that stuff is a lifesaver, having that. All right, so next time this restarts will be finished product. All right, it's a new day and it's in a new way. So this really goes out to my man Edwin Abel, who's a subscriber here in the channel. He's the one that asked me if I would do a video showing this thing. Now, I'm going to tell you this. If you care or don't care about getting glue all over your handle, then don't do it the way I did. Don't just slab it with a pen cap. For me personally, because I use the snot out of my knives, I don't care if I have glue hanging out all over them. If you are a collector or someone who buys knives and wants them to maintain that pretty look their entire lives, use a Q-tip and don't go so heavy with it. Like with me, I just don't care. I don't care. So I was able to get, like you can see, I got a little bit on the blade. I don't care. I just scraped it off. But I use that cold steel sling blade. So it's in my pocket, as a matter of fact. That's what I used. I took my cold steel sling blade, which I was just using outside just now, and with some of the excess, all I did is take that and just kind of do this, and the glue just flakes right off. So, and that's off the handle, so it's not, you're not coming off of, you know, where you need the glue to stay. That's not coming off. And then when it came down to the blade, I left a little bit right here so I could show you. I just drooled on myself. Oop, I'm not even showing you. All I did is this. So it's basically what you do with a razor blade, except I used the sling blade from Cold Steel, and it worked out perfect. So, no rattle, no loosening. Everything is in there, on there, done there. That is solid as a rock. Of course, I put a lot on there. And I let that stuff harden and sit, and I just don't care if you can see glue around the edges, because when it comes down to it, when you're out in the woods, or you know, you're facing that enemy Bigfoot, things are coming at you, you really don't care what your knife looks like. You care how it performs. And this right here is a performer. Now it's a really tight performer, and to go ahead and test that, even though it's cold outside, and you all know I hate going out in the cold, we're going to take this out to the 1-inch forest, maybe chop down some stuff and maybe hit a log or something, just to see if this loosens, which I don't think it's going to. All right, so let's go outside and do that. Edwin Abel, this one's on you, man. You know, all those times I press pause and this stuff don't pause. Hold on. Just a little something, guys. If you live out in an area where you get cold, like right now, it's not snowing, it's more like a sleet we got going on. But these Eddie Bauer jackets are amazing. If you are a sissy in the cold like me and you want to stay warm, the Eddie Bauer jacket is no joke. All right, so I got the dogs running around out here like a couple of mental cases, and let's find something to chop at. Ah, I see something we could chop at. Let's take a walk. Now, normally I'd have my my tripod with me so I could set you guys up, but honestly, I don't think I'm gonna be out here very long because, well, I don't like it. So let's find us a nice log to whack at. This one looks like it'll do the job, and it's frozen, so it's nice and hard. Try to keep you guys in. Gosh, this blade is so nice. Look at this blade. So, come out here and chop a little wood. Chop the good wood. I mean, that's pretty simple. What I want to do is give it a couple hard downward throws, because if you're ever going to loosen something, hard downward throws are generally where you're going to do it. So, and we'll do a little split test right here. We got that up there. Oh, man. All right, so here's the good thing. This is a really good thing. I don't know if you can see this dent right here. I sliced through and I caught the guard there hard enough to make a huge divot right here into the wood, right? And there is zero loosening. Luckily, Cold Steel makes these kind of sharp, so it literally stuck in and did not loosen the handguard. So it did the chop, which I wanted it to do, but then it did something I didn't expect it to do. That's pretty cool. That's saying I just took a direct shot on the brass handguard, and there is zero loosening because of the JB Weld. That was a test I did not plan on. Chopping the wood, that was my plan. But I did not plan on jabbing the end of the handguard into the wood, because normally you'd think, well, that would be stupid because it's going to loosen. Not today. JB Weld, guys. All right, so we're going to do a couple hard downward throws right here. Hopefully you guys stay in the frame. Bam. Oh, and that's in there. That's in there. That's a good hard throw. Bam. Oh, ah, look how deep that was. Oh my goodness. It split the wood. Look at that. All right, so let's take, maybe try and take it out of there. All right, so There is zero loosening. So that's all we're going to do out here. We're going to bring it back inside. We're going to clean it off. We're going to put some more hops gun oil on it. No rattle. No rattle. We chopped. We came down on a log split. We stabbed the freaking handguard into a log. No loosening. Hard downward throws. No loosening. Am I going to tell you that this is a success? Yes, I am. It succeeded. So this thing is exactly how and what it should be. Let me adjust you guys right here. Cold steel, Wild West Bowie. You get one with, and you loosen your S guard. Little JB Weld does the trick. All right, Edwin Abel, I hope this answered your questions. I'm Donnie B all day. And until next knife.